कंटेंट क्रिएटर बनना चाहते हो ना, पैसा नहीं है, अभी पता नहीं कंटेंट कैसे बनाना होता है, किस तरह का कंटेंट काम करता है, कब जाके उससे पैसा आने लगता है और अच्छी क्वालिटी का कंटेंट कैसे बनाना है। ये पॉडकास्ट आपको इन सारे सवालों का आंसर देगा, और सिर्फ आंसर ही नहीं, एक प्रैक्टिकल, फुल प्रूफ, जेन्युइन आपको फॉर्मूला भी मिलेगा। आकाश दामोदरन एक ऐसे कंटेंट क्रिएटर हैं जिन्होंने एक कन्वेंशनल लाइफ से हटके अपने लिए एक डिफरेंट लाइफ चूज़ की। बीइंग फ्रॉम अ टेकी इंजीनियर, उसके बाद खुद का बिजनेस रन किया, एंड देन उनको मौका मिला, या यूँ कहें मजबूरी सही सही, वो कंटेंट क्रिएशन स्पेस के अंदर आए। बट हियर ही इज मेकिंग एन अमेजिंग मार्क फॉर हिमसेल्फ। उनके पॉडकास्ट को लाखों लोग सुन चुके हैं और वो टॉप मोस्ट पॉडकास्ट के अंदर रैंक करता है। बट व्हाट मैटर्स इज कि आज के शो में उन्होंने जो बातें हमसे की, जो इनसाइट्स हमें बताए और ऐसी पावरफुल जो टिप्स उन्होंने दी, उनको यूज़ करके कोई भी इंसान अगर कंटेंट क्रिएशन स्पेस में अभी नया अपने लिए कंटेंट बना रहा है, या फिर कंटेंट बना रहा है पर उतना डिजायर्ड सक्सेस नहीं मिल पा रहा है, या जो इस गेम को स्केल अप करना चाहता है, इसमें प्रोफेशनल बनना चाहता है, उस इंसान के लिए ये टिप्स बहुत बहुत ज़्यादा हेल्पफुल रहने वाली हैं, एंड दीज कैन बी अ गेम चेंजर। सो अगर आप इन्फ्लुएंसर बनना चाहते हैं, कंटेंट क्रिएटर बनना चाहते हैं और एक पावरफुल इन्फ्लुएंशियल फेस बनना चाहते हैं ऑन सोशल मीडिया, देन डेफिनेटली दिस इज द पॉडकास्ट दैट यू नीड टू वॉच। सो लेट्स गेट टू द इम्पैक्ट शो विद आकाश दामोदरन। हेलो एवरीवन एंड वेलकम टू द इम्पैक्ट शो बाय बिज गुरुकुल। और आज के हमारे शो में वी हैव एन अमेजिंग गेस्ट हु इज अ वेरी वेरी पावरफुल कंटेंट क्रिएटर एंड who has a conventional story like other people have. He is a techie, then went to do a corporate job, but what's unconventional is that how he molded his career out of that and now making a mark into the content career industry, in fact content creation industry I must say, right? तो आप में से हर वो इंसान जो कंटेंट क्रिएटर बनना चाहता है, जो ये चाहता है कि भाई मैं ये अच्छे अच्छे लोग मेरे शो के ऊपर आए, मैं उनको इंटरव्यू कर पाऊं, मैं लोगों को अच्छी नॉलेज दे पाऊं, अपना अच्छा ब्रांड बिल्डअप कर पाऊं, उनके लिए दिस पॉडकास्ट इज अ मस्ट वॉच। सो लेट्स वेलकम आकाश दामोदरन। हाय आकाश, हाउ आर यू?
I'm doing great, Rohit. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. I'm excited, by the way.
equally excited. Here I am. And in fact, to all the audience, who is listening to us, they are ready with their pen and paper. I'm damn sure, because in our community, everybody wants to be a very very powerful content creator, right? And that is why I'm so glad that you agreed and took out your time out of your busy schedule to enlighten us about the content creation space, the creator economy, and all those things which we are going to discuss about.
Excited, looking forward to it.
Great. So Akash, to begin with, I just wanted to know, like, how has your normal routine life been? Like, like where were you born and brought up? Then how did you come to this content creation space? Living all that normal life, you had a corporate job. What made you opt for this career? In fact,
So it's I'd say career by mistake. That's the simplest way I can put it, because I had no plans of becoming a content creator, let alone building maybe businesses in the content space. But I've always been an avid consumer of good content, right? Just like most of us are. If you think about it, right, about 10, 15 years ago, if you need to consume content, the best place for you to consume content is to basically go to the big screen, the silver screen, watch a movie or two. And not everyone watches a movie, right? And not everyone wants to shell out money to, sit and dedicate maybe 2.5 hours in a theater.
True.
But our family's been doing that for generations, literally, been consuming content. And again, I think it's very ingrained in the Malayali culture where, the movie drops and the first 3 days, everyone in the city has already consumed all of it. Right? So, and the fact that now we're moving towards, I wouldn't just say Web 3.0, but just how the creator economy is evolved. I think that the threshold to consuming content has reduced drastically, right? So now with OTT platforms and YouTube and whatnot, it's become so much easier. So I've always been an avid consumer, but and again, when I look at good content, I have a knack to picking up, okay, this looks great, this is what works, this is what may not work, all of that. But I always considered myself as a consumer, not a creator. Wow. Right? That demarcation, I think a lot of people go through. And again, you might indirectly feel you're the consumer. I mean, everyone is a consumer, but in terms of becoming a creator, you need to be very intentional about being a creator, and that's what I felt, right? So to give you some sort of a background, I've been in Bangalore pretty much all my life. um, I looked at what others were doing, and well, everyone's doing science, so let's take up science. Then I saw that, I mean, I asked people, so what do I do after science? So, well, you've done science, so then obviously you should do engineering. So obviously I did engineering. Which engineering works best? Well, computer science works best. And then that was done. And then, like, what do you do now? Well, you have to go looking for one of those best, high paying tech jobs. So then, yeah, when the companies came down to my college, I was like, okay, this is the first company that comes through. I need to get through, and I got through. Great. Now, and once I got into that is when I realized this is a never ending cycle, right? I'm lucky to have, maybe gone through maybe 5 years in the corporate industry and corporate, or rather leading a corporate career, to maybe quickly realize that. But there are people who have led it for 25 years who still haven't gotten it, right? Because what's the next milestone? Well, get married. What's the next milestone? Have a kid. What's the next milestone? Whatever, right? Buy a house, right? That will never change. It's how, and I had a guest on my show, Jishnu Das Gupta from Suratma, who very nicely put it. He said, society will very nicely put one milestone a little away from our reach, and we have to like slowly, run towards it. And then once you reach there is when you realize this milestone is not the main milestone. There's the next one.
Another one waiting for that.
Exactly. So it's all very societal, right? So about a couple of years into this is when I started consuming a lot of podcasts, right? And when I started listening to people, and especially the podcasts of the West, because I still feel our Indian podcasts are still little behind. It's still in the nascent stages for the most bit. I'm not talking about numbers, because obviously we have numbers, but in terms of like I said,
the quality of the content, I guess, the depth of it, right?
Exactly. So being intentional about it, right? So there's the technical aspect of a podcast. There's also your creative aspect of the podcast, right? What does your format need to look like? And most people get caught up in the former, which is, oh, what equipment should I use? Which mic should I use? Which camera should I use? How long should it be? None of that really matters if you can't build that relatability bond, right? If you can't really convey a message very clearly, or maybe you've gotten a guest and you've, taken that person's time for granted and you're just asking regular questions, it doesn't help anyone, right? It really doesn't give your audience enough incentive to want to check out your podcast. So when I started consuming podcasts, I was very intentional about the shows I was tuning into, and again I was looking at how they were creating content, because audio is a very interesting space, right? I mean, we have had audio for centuries, I'd say, because like for radio and whatnot, right?
Like it was the audio first, the video came later, right? Again, absolutely. Now we are moving back to the audio.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's just people and companies and brands just trying to dabble their toes and figure out what works, because right now everything's very saturated, and I get that. But when I started listening to these people is when I realized two things. One, we need to have podcasts in India that really are very intentional, like I said, which goes back to the same thing. And second, really amp up the quality. This is on the tech side of things. Quality in a way that, man, this is something that you only see very few people in the West do, or people who are backed up by production houses do. These two things got me thinking a whole lot, right? And at the same time, I've always been a very drawn to business. So even with the career that I just told you, right, or my background, my main aim was to get an MBA. That was my main aim, right? Because that's what's been drilled in my head from the time I was maybe born, right? From one of the top B schools, just get in and your life is set. You are done. That's it. Then you're just going to fly. But what is that? That's for the first 25, 30 years of my life, right? So when I got through this, got into this corporate job or this corporate role, and I started doing this and I was working towards the MBA, is when I realized maybe I don't need to get an MBA to learn business, right? That's what got me thinking. So two things happening side by side. One is me being drawn to business, and the other side is me consuming content, right? So finally I decided to take the plunge and leave my job, or rather, actually, I talk about this a lot on my podcast. And again, my podcast Against the Odds is all about talking to individuals to not lead the conventional path. It's for you to think outside the box, and then you lead an intentional life. Again, if you want to lead the conventional path, that's great, but you should be clear why you're doing it, or whether that is something that you want to actually do. Don't do it because everyone's doing it, right? So in that as well, so having spoken to so many people, I realized, okay, you can't just up and about say I'm going to quit my job and that's it, everything will fall into place because I'm going to put in hard work. Everyone thinks discipline and hard work, you'll get everything. That's not how it works. There's a lot of other factors in play, and and apart from factors at play, you don't have a lot of things that are in your control. True. Right? It's all outside your control. So you can only do what you have under your control, right? So I decided to take a break from my work for 3 months or 4 months. I took a sabbatical from work, which is something I feel a lot of Indians don't take advantage of. If you have a corporate job, they think that either if I take a break from work, which is unpaid leave, right? So if you take a break from work, the guy next to me is going to get ahead in their career, right? If I come back, my year-end rating is going to take a huge hit. Or they think, why am I worthy of taking a break? They won't approve my break. Which is, if you think about it, right? We have these weird thoughts which are just societal in nature, right? It's just something that's been drilled into our head. But I decided, you know what, instead of leaving my job, let me take a break. I'll try out this business idea that I have, which was in the food and beverage space. And let me see if it works. Then I'll come back. I'll work for the bit and quit my job and pursue it. And that's exactly what happened. I took 3.5 months, away from work, and business picked up. Again, one man business itself for the most bit. I was doing everything on my own, trying to figure out whether there's a model. And again, to keep it very brief, this was a business where we I'd say intermediating platform between corporate companies and food vendors. Okay. Right. The idea was to be a Swiggy for the corporate sector at the bulk level. So more, I wouldn't say Swiggy because again, it's a little more B2C centric, but here it's more like the company needs catering. What do we do? The company wants to revamp their food court. What do we do? And again, anything food related, we'll get you the right places. Because if you think about it, catering in the most conventional sense is basically what you'll get either the bottom guys who will just come with their trays and put something up and serve, or you get your 5-star hotels. There's no in between. Right. So it's when I started getting brands on board. I got some of the top brands, not just in Bangalore, in India on board. We got started when things really start picking up. So I came back to my job. I was like, okay, I used to go to work about 4 hours earlier, sit in the morning at about 6 o'clock. So I was the only one. I used to come in and switch on the lights, the entire floor, and I'll just come and I'll chill there for the next 4 hours. I had my first call at 9:30. So I finished my work for 4 hours, and then I'm good to work on my regular job. And then it's fine. Even if the day goes to shit, it doesn't matter because I've gotten my bed sorted. Right. So that's what worked for me. And I realized, okay, now I need to quit my job if I need to pursue this. Side by side, the content bit is happening as well. I'm consuming, and I'm like, okay, I need to create a podcast. I need to create a podcast where I can talk to people and do something like what these guys are doing in the West. Okay. And I've been thinking about that. But then, like I said, I didn't want to do just a run-of-the-mill podcast. I wanted to do something that was a little unique. So I decided it has to have video to it because video is the future. At least even if people don't consume my content on video, it's a good way to market. There's a reason why we are having this with, some sort of a recording, right? Because you can't convince people with audio. Marketing, audio never really works. True. But on the flip side, retention, audio definitely works, right? So that's the balance I had in mind. So I was like, I need to do this. And finally, I quit my job, started pursuing this, the F&B business. We did a whole lot for, I think, about 2 or 3 quarters, made a bunch of money. We expanded to some of the biggest companies in the world. Coworks was our partner. We had Mindtree's food courts that were taken over by us. We had a whole lot of things happening, and it was great.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But then something not so amazing happened, which is COVID. And the moment that happened, everyone's sitting at home and there's no way for us to pivot with a model like this. We tried a whole lot, but then I was like, okay, do I need to do this? We'll try this. We invest a lot of money, effort, time, not really paying off. And then over the last, year and a half, I realized that is something I can't really do, the F&B bit. So I decided to...
It was taken by the hospitality and F&B industry itself, no?
Big time. And even now, right? So a lot of people, I remember this at the end of 2020, everyone's like, don't worry, 2021, everything will get sorted. Don't worry. Everything's coming back. Coming back.
The vaccine is there, everything will fall in place now.
Exactly. And I'm like, yeah, okay, great. But that was the biggest mistake I did, having to, listen to all of this. And I started with my content journey, which I'll get to. But at the same time, I continued this, which is completely not worth it. Now, with people telling me we're coming back, all that, I'm like, no, we put the company on the back burner. I've got a person or two handling the entire thing, whatever requirements are there. I jumped right into content. And again, I have zero experience with content. Zero. I'm talking zero. I have no experience talking to the camera. I don't even know how to hold a camera. I don't know how to check levels on audio. I don't know what a microphone entails. I don't know anything. But I know that if I look at a piece of content, I know whether it's good or bad.
Okay.
Now, the question was, how do I get from here to there? That was the challenge. And that is what, see, most people talk about. I mean, most people have the challenge of getting started, which I completely agree. If you don't have money to invest in equipment, get started with what you have. But don't treat your audience, really badly and just put something
granted for in terms of content, right?
Exactly. I think you need to be very particular about what you're trying to put out and how you're trying to put it out there. So if you're shooting with iPhone as well, you should be able to frame it in a nice way. You should be able to use the right settings.
Visually good, appealing to the eyes, right?
Absolutely. And I think that really that thought is what has really helped us. So I think in about I think March or April is when I started planning this whole video podcast series. It's called Against the
right?
Pardon? 2020.
Okay.
Yeah. And by June, we started shooting.
Okay.
And I was hell-bent on ensuring we have one episode dropping every week.
Okay.
Because a lot, what I note when I started studying patterns, I noticed everyone struggling with putting out one high-quality episode every week. Consistency is a big thing.
The biggest issue with content creators. No?
Exactly. So I read this somewhere where if you have gotten past the third episode of your podcast, you're already ahead of 50% of the people who started with podcasts, because the third episode mark is very important. Then if you get past the seventh episode mark, and again, this is a weekly format, then that means you're ahead of almost 80% of the remaining people, which is crazy. So actually, you just staying consistent is automatically creating more opportunities for you, and for you to get in front of more people, right? So which is something a lot of people don't know, right? So I decided I'm going to shoot and record 8 episodes first before publishing.
Okay.
And while doing that, maybe I'll realize if I'm even good at this. How do I know if it'll even work? Can I even talk to another person this way on camera? Will the guest be comfortable talking to me? Will I be able to get the message across? Luckily, those things kind of panned out and worked out. And through the course of that, I started learning how to use a camera, how to use a mirrorless, how to use a video camera, how to set levels for audio. And we started putting in a whole lot of time and effort into making it look really good. Invested into equipment. And it started looking like almost like a documentary or a Netflix show of sorts. And we started. And that is where our podcast started. From there, we went on to getting a studio of our own. We started recording with bigger guests. The show is now part of, I think, the top 2% of the podcasts in the world. Wow. We crossed 165. Now it's more, actually. It's about 185,000 listens and downloads, which is something I never expected. And again, with this consistency, we had to take a break because of the second wave of COVID, because it's an in-person podcast. I was sure that every episode should be in person. I mean, we are now thinking about getting a few remote guests, but for the most bit, have it in person. And I think that really, really helps us as well. Helps control the video, audio, all of that. So yeah, so basically that. And I think that's what's worked for us. And now we are back to publishing again, have bigger guests on. And through the course of this, I also started creating YouTube videos. Started doing a whole lot of standalone short form content, and that also started picking up. Through the course of this, a lot of brands started approaching me saying, hey, who's handling your video and who's doing all of this? And I was like, we have one person, it's me, and that's it. And then I started getting deals. Now I have so many clients working with me for podcasting, for content strategy, brand strategy, video production, ads. We create a whole lot of that. But what I want to really do is help individuals in their content creation journey for the most part. That's my main key intent here. So that's why the podcast works. And at the same time, my clients as well, I'm looking for individuals who are looking at this. But again, the video is a little expensive. I'm not going to lie, because there is a whole lot of effort that goes into making it look that way, the equipment and the editing and all of that. So people who have the money to spend have now partnered with us to, for all of that. So that's where I'm at right now, balancing of client work with my own original content and, really trying to stay at it. I know I spoke for a long time and I went on and on, but I'm so sorry. I
No,
just
but it was worth
force
it.
of habit.
It was worth it. No, it was worth it. In fact, see, it's genuine, hence it's coming from heart, you know. So we can feel that. And अगर audience, you know, उसको ध्यान से कोई भी सुन रहा है जिसने पिछली 8 से 10 मिनट की आपकी बात सुनी, so they'll be easily relate, you know, be able to relate to it. Because
Correct.
out of this, no, मुझे खुद 3-4 points ऐसे मिले जिसके ऊपर मैं आगे आपसे पूछूंगा अभी, because these are the things which everybody has in their mind, you know. I mean, they have these fears, you know, how to choose an offbeat career. Okay, they have this fear how to convince my family. You know, they have this thing, you know. Okay, I want to start, but my podcast or my show should look this way. So we get into this either paralysis of analysis, or you can call it a perfectionism. Right.
Correct.
So these are all the things which are common in all the you know in minds of all those people who are just want to become a content creator, or they have started it but they're having some challenges, or the third one, like, which everybody has a goal of, to become a very very famous content creator.
For things to go viral, basically.
Yeah. Great. So the very first question which I want to ask you, out of your amazing story, how did you convince your family for this? I mean, starting a startup into F&B industry, and then coming into the content field, and choosing it as a full-time career.
Yeah, I didn't. They still don't know.
Okay,
no, I'm just messing with you. No. Of course they don't. Oh man, no. It was a little challenging. I'm not going to lie. Initial days, I remember when when you drop the bomb on your family and you tell them, "I'm planning to do this," right? Then itself it starts. Right, they're like, oh my god, and the good thing was my wife and I had already moved out. Right, we've been living at our own space, and that's why when I got started with my podcast, my first studio was shooting at home.
Mm-hmm.
My dining room was my studio.
Okay.
Literally, I had everything, lighting to equipment and audio, everything set up on the same very table I'm speaking on right now was on my, basically my dining room studio, make do studio. And my guests used to come on over to my place and we used to record.
And your wife was supportive of this idea from the beginning?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I remember when I decided to quit my job, even she had a corporate job.
Okay.
And we both have been very drawn to business, and we've been planning to move out for a while, right? Mm-hmm. And again, there's this whole again, it's all milestones and goals, goal based drive, right? You're like, oh, when I get to this point, I will start doing it. When I reach there, once I learn how to use a video camera, then I will do it. Let me make 2 lakhs per month, then I will do. No, none of that ever works. It's the same. If you actually trickle that down into simpler terms, it's you telling yourself, I will only be happy when I get there. Does that mean you're not happy right now? You can be happy right now and still, build towards what you want. Right. So yeah. So in this case, I just told my family. I just told my wife. My wife was supportive. My family was very apprehensive. But I think the more I started doing and showing, results and, things, again, I didn't have to explain it to them. They could see it. Like if I dropped a mailer or if I dropped, I showed how our Instagram page started blowing up. Okay, if I had to talk from a content perspective, quality of content is something they could see. They're like, my God, when they started sharing it with their peers, they're like, dude, who's doing this? And this is great. They even, I have my dad's friends who want to become my clients, but I don't have the capacity or bandwidth to take it on right now. Right. So I think work speaks for itself. So even if, and there's something with a lot of people have reached out to me on Instagram and even emails about how do we convince the family and how do we actually get to it, right? Even if they're not convinced, the first idea is, are you convinced about the path you're planning to take? If you're not convinced, there's a good chance that you will fall off the bandwagon. That is the first thing. Second, once you are convinced, then you don't need to convince anyone. You continue doing what you're doing right now, but you will have to make additional time for what you want to do. It's as simple as that. So taking calculated risks is a good way to go about it. So don't just up and about. That's what I said earlier, right? Don't up and about leave, your job, leave everything and say, now, oh, this is what Steve Jobs did, or this is what these. No, it doesn't work that way. Being a little more calculated, a little bit more, having a little bit more foresight will go a long way. Right. So planning from that perspective is the best way to do. So what do? 3 months, just keep at it. You want to start a business, get into it. Work 3 hours extra every day. work on your business. In 3 months, if you're absolutely not able to show anything, then you're on the wrong path. I'm saying absolutely, maybe slightly something, right? Content space, you want to create content, create 10 videos. Can you do it in a span of 2 months? Go ahead and try it. If you can't, then you're not cut out for the job. As simple. And again, it's like, oh, I don't have time because my job and all. No, you have to make time for what is important. Either set expectations with your company and figure out how you make more additional time to create your content, or just figure it out. I mean, people have to really struggle and get to it, right? So once you start doing that and then you show them proof of concept, families usually will get convinced. The problem is having to believe someone who hasn't done something like this is obviously a challenge for anyone, right? It's human psyche almost, right? So you can't blame your family for that. What you can do is really, put yourself out there and show them that this is what you're capable of. And once things start flowing in, then it kind of becomes second nature. And then you can decide what you want to do. And again, my intention was very clear. It's like, is there a way I can get to making the same amount of money I made at my corporate job with a creator, a creator business or creator economy space? And well, I got to that. So I think it's about getting to that, bridging that gap. So once you get there, family, and not just your family, anyone and everyone's convinced. Your friends also probably won't be convinced first. They'll probably nod along, smile and say, dude, all the best, you're going to do well and all of that. But instead they're like, man, this guy is just going to a dog.
Crazy.
Exactly. So I think doing is the best way to convince anyone. Instead of don't sit and try and talk to them for 3 hours straight. That will never work.
True.
Instead, take 2.5 hours out of that and work on it and show them that. As simple as that. Yeah.
Truly justified. So one thing which comes here now is like, suppose a person is creating 10 videos, right? He has posted 10 videos and now, but he doesn't get that kind of response from a market which he was expecting, right? So it didn't blow off, or like it just didn't have that kind of effect, right? So then there are two things. Number one, the person himself starts getting demotivated or he starts questioning himself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And number two is obviously he sees that, the chance of his family or spouse getting convinced, that's becoming weak. Okay. So like, how do you deal with that? Or did it happen with you, or how does other people, how they should manage this?
I think that's a very important question, Rohit. And I think like I said, right, it's about convincing yourself first and ensuring your bases are checked off. Everyone wants their show to, like I said, go viral, get millions of views, or again, this is from a podcast perspective, or even if you're in the content space and you put out, put your heart and soul into a project and the video doesn't do well, it tanks, and then you're like, man, what am I doing? But the beauty about internet and the beauty about the content space is that once you put it out there, people can always come back and consume your content. Right? So the pressure that we put on ourselves is that in that first week, it has to go viral.
Right.
We have to get 1 million views in the first week. Right. And I had this long conversation with another friend of mine who runs a business in the digital marketing space. He was telling me how Green Room and what's this Clubhouse, right? Clubhouse and all of these may not really be the future, because you don't have a way for you to go back and consume what has already been
content. Right.
Correct. Right. There's no link or static perception of the content, right? So that's
a one-time affair. No, there is no recording of it.
Exactly. So you can always use that to couple your base business, which is like, if you have main content space and you add something that is only for 24 hours, or let's say it's a one-time thing. That's what Instagram is doing with their Instagram Live and Instagram Stories. So that's why it really works, right? So I think the pressure we put on ourselves is, one, we have to go viral quickly. It has to get views quickly. But what I have realized is that I put out my episodes. Maybe it has got, and again, I'll talk more from a podcast perspective, right? Even YouTube videos as well. Maybe some of the videos got only about 300 views in the first, first week. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, when people come, maybe they found me through some particular episode of my podcast, or they found me through some YouTube video. They'll come back and consume my other pieces of content. And then over time, these have evolved or kind of, snowballed rather into so many more views.
Right.
So that's one thing I would say. First of all, stick in it for the long run. Second, how do you stick in it for a long? How do you how do you get along with the system that kind of helps this? I think the only way, and again, this I could be wrong, but this is my perception, right? You should be able to do something in content space without expecting anything in return. That's my fundamental principle. I have told this to all my clients, and maybe except for ads or the marketing side of things, where we are created specifically for like conversion or something. But if you're just creating a podcast, if you're creating YouTube videos, if you're creating something in the content space, don't do it because you're expecting views.
Okay.
Don't do it because you're expecting money. Do it because you like creating. Right? That's the biggest challenge. So I know creators who have gone at it for 2 years straight. 2 years straight, proper. They've invested, and I'm talking people from who are in the initial days of content. 2 years straight, and it doesn't work out, and they give up. Not because they don't like it, but the feeling of not getting views is so overwhelming that they couldn't get themselves to create. Okay. You cannot get to that point. That is the biggest challenge. That's one thing. So once you can ensure that I'm doing this because I want to do it, not because other people, should definitely come and consume, is one thing. So once you're assured of that, then is where consistency and everything else comes into play. What do people say? Like, create at least 20-30 videos, create maybe every week one video for an entire year. Chances of you doing well are quite high. Quite high, because you have to stick with it, right? So that's where I think once you have a process in place and go to it, it'll come back. And if you like doing it, then you have nothing else to kind of lose, right? So that's where I personally feel you need to, if you're in the creator space, you need to find something that feeds you, which could be a client work, which could be a full-time job, it could be a part-time job, you could be freelancing, you could be doing anything. Figure out those bases, and when money is not a problem anymore, then you move into you basically creating for yourself. And again, this is, I think, I don't remember who said it, but you create for an audience of one. That's the beautiful thing about being successful, in the content creator space, is create for an audience of one, yourself.
Yes.
Create for yourself. And again, I was on another podcast, and we were talking, again, he's my good friend, and we were talking about the creator economy, and he was asking me, how do you stay with this process? How do you do this? What can we really do to ensure success? I'm like, see, success is all very internal, right? You can't, if you don't feel successful and everyone else looks at you as success, how those cases have gone. There are actors who have just gotten into such a bad space because of that. Vice versa also is possible, right? So I think when you decide to create for an audience of one, and you're creating, and let's say, for instance, you create, in this case, you create an episode. Okay, 10 weeks later, I asked you to sit down and watch your own episode. And you can't go through the whole episode, then you have done something wrong.
True. Wow, what an insight then.
No, so that's why there are clients who have reached out to me saying, I love to podcast, I'd love to do this, it'll be awesome, I can't wait to become the next Joe Rogan and all that. I'm like, have you podcasted before? Have you tried something before? They're like, no. So what has drawn you to this? Well, they'll tell me reasons, but actually the internal reason is, well, how much money they can make, how much fame they can get, all of that, right? So I say, don't think about all of this. Can you do me a favor? Take your iPhone, record 8 episodes on your own, on 8 different days.
Okay.
After the 8th episode is done, if you still have the drive to do the 9th one, then you're on the right path. Second, go back and consume all 8 of the episodes. Can you go through the whole episode and not get bored? Then you're doing the right thing. Right? So it comes back to that. So if you can ensure that, then staying consistent kind of just falls into play. And then you don't have to worry about money because you have full-time job or whatever else is paying first. And then you invest time in in creating what you love. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
It does. It truly does. Which brings me to one more question out of it. Is that how, you advocated this fact, that you wanted to be different from the other podcasters, right? And it's the same with everyone. Like, everybody wants, okay, my content should be different from other people, but yes, I want to still compete into that space. So the kind of a blue ocean strategy, it happens there, right?
Yeah.
So how to innovate? Though I agree, one thing is when you consume more, definitely your mind will give you those ideas. It's a very powerful idea creation machine. But then apart from that, what other steps did you take or you want to advise our listener? Okay, that these are the things which you can do to make your content innovative or impart that kind of creativity into that content, which will make you stand apart.
So that's also a very good question, and I think it comes down to your personality type, right? If you have always been a creative personality, or you have that that creative personality trait, then you should definitely trust your gut, go with your instinct, and create what you want. Most of these filmmakers, not just in the West, in India as well, are doing incredible things with their careers because they're thinking really outside the box, right? You take people like Quentin Tarantino, who's created some crazy things, not because of listening to other people, because he felt there's this inherent draw to create something like this, right? So if you are a creative personality type, and I mean by being a creative personality type, it doesn't mean, oh, I am very creative, you announce to the world and that's it. No, you have been doing something in the art field, you've been doing something in the music field, or something in the creative space from the time you were a kid, as a hobby or something. Then we know you are a creatively inclined person.
Right.
The other thing is, if you are so to answer your question, that way if you're a creative person, you can just get to innovative and try different things. But what if you're the analytical person like me? I have zero creativity, dude. I'm not even kidding. I at certain times I'm just sitting, I'm wondering, how can I make this sound or look great? What can I do differently? And it's a big challenge because you get writer's block, you get creative block. What do we do?
I can relate to it absolutely.
Yeah, and that's where I think you intentionally consume. So that is where the other thing, you can take inspiration from other people's work. You can literally even copy their work, but don't do exactly that.
True.
You can take, let's say you study someone else's podcast, you like the format, let's pick exactly these bits. Not the way they're talking, not the like format in the sense, okay, there's going to be an intro here, this is how it's going to happen, this is how we introduce the guests, all of that. We can take inspiration. And inspiration and creativity, I personally feel, is limited. And I had this conversation with a guest. The creativity in this whole world is actually limited, if you think about it.
Right.
There are people who think outside the box, but probably like thousands of years ago, another person has already thought outside the box.
Correct.
Right? So you read about it and then you get that person's thing. So that means you're copying that person's work. But no, you get it. So that whole thing is limited. So there's nothing wrong in taking inspiration from another creator. If you find something interesting, and you should actually give credit to those creators because they got you thinking. Most people say, this is my unique way of, like creating a podcast or a video. No one else is, I've not watched a single video. This is what came to me naturally. Most times they are, talking through their end. So yeah. So I think that's a simple way to, if you're a creative person, try innovating, try doing it, and then you'll know. Or else, on the other hand, consume the right kind of content. The problem that happens is we go to YouTube, we search for something, and we start looking at a video, and then we start, binging, or we go down that rabbit hole of, just like wasting time on YouTube. That is the challenge. So I think you being intentional about that will go a long way.
True. Absolutely. Wow. Amazing answer. I'm just loving your answers because for two reasons, Number one, they have that sense of genuinity in it. Right? I mean, everything is coming because you have actually done that, been there, done that kind of thing. So since it's coming from there, it certainly has that impact, which I can feel by listening to the answers. And the second thing is that I can relate to it so much, because I face all those challenges while creating content, and I'm seeing other people also facing such challenges. Like consistency is the first thing, making it more creative, and then being in awe, like on seeing a reel going viral, which has nothing into it. That makes people feel, doubt themselves, in fact, feel, low about themselves. Okay, why is my content not going viral? I'm putting much more value into it.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was just that actually remind me. I think I should call out a few examples with reels, right? Let's say with what Instagram is now putting on steroids because short form content works, right? With my, let's say, I'll give an example. With my podcast, I create a lot of short bit trailers, or I create short form content, right? Like a 30-second snippet, and I put that up as a reel. It takes a whole lot of effort because the entire thing is produced, so well that I have to take all the more effort to make it look nice in a vertical 1080 by 1920 format, right? We spend so much time, and you realize that it doesn't work because reels itself has a style to it. Right. So unless you follow that kind of quick cuts, or you have something thrown at them quickly, people are not going to watch for long. And then if it's not watch for long, then basically Instagram's not going to promote your piece. Right. So this got me thinking a while ago, should I even create this in the first place? Like, is this even helping me out? The idea is to get people to consume the full episode. So maybe they'll see the snippet and come back. So there have definitely been hits and misses for sure along the way. Some of them have gotten maybe maximum 50 views, right? 50 likes. We got thousands of views. That's great. But in terms of likes and all, it's okay. Engagement. Some of them have blown up. Things I didn't even expect. I think the one with one of our guests went, I think it's at 1 million views on Instagram, which is crazy, right? I mean, and there's one now with Sonali that's currently trending, and I think it is about 1,300 likes or so. I think about 300,000 views, something on those lines. Now, the point is, again, what goes back to what I said earlier, right? If you like creating that and you create a portfolio of sorts for yourself, then people, when they come back and check out your Instagram, they'll realize, okay, this is the vibe that I'd like to, kind of with, right? This is what I would like to consume on a regular basis. Yeah. And the only way you can do that is basically making a portfolio on your Instagram itself. Imagine you put 3 high quality reels. And then the others 97 is just bakwas content, it's some random nonsense you're just putting up because reels will work. And people come back, they'll first like your first piece because it's so well produced, and then they look at the next one like, why is this guy yelling like a maniac? What's happening here? Right? So I think your work also automatically becomes your portfolio. Right now, when my clients are not coming to me because I'm going out there looking for clients, they have seen my content. And like maybe you went and checked out my YouTube channel, you go from one video to another and you'll see maybe some sort of consistency, if not an up in the quality. Right? So that is another important thing. If you're in the creator space, just create and you'll automatically build a resume and a portfolio. That's another thing that, again, it just struck me, because you worry about views and likes and all that. Doesn't matter. If you've stayed consistent for a year with something, people know that. People know the kind of effort, and especially people in that technical space will know the effort. So yeah.
Okay. So one generic question which brings me here is, like, while you were talking about all these things, there is one question that comes into mind, and that is sort of feeling rejected or negativity. Like, if your content is not working, good in that way, right? So one part we have discussed, like, how to innovate then, or how to be creative, like consuming more and all those things, right? But when it gets into your head, that negative phase, so how do you deal with that kind of negativity, for a longer run, or maybe, come out of it and kind of become a phoenix?
Yeah. Oh my God, dude, it's a tough question. And I don't think anyone will fully figure it out, because doubt, self-doubt, anxiety, which can become, kind of transparent to depression, all of that is very, very, it's pretty much doing the rounds these days, because that's how, social media is trying to work off our primal brains. Like, our brains are literally thousands, millennia, old. But what we have learned in the last 10, 20 years with, content and how social media is, working our system, is they're trying to give us one thing, but actually in form of another. And that's why we get into all of these things, right? So in terms of looking at someone's content and saying, man, this guy was able to, become successful in 2 years, or that person was able to, it was an overnight success of sorts. And then you comparing yourself directly to them is the mistake. So I think comparison is the issue. But the problem here is, I can tell you comparison is the issue, but we inherently will do the comparison, right? No matter what I tell you, you will still look at that person and say, he's doing the exact same thing, right? So now I'll tell you another way to look at this. You imagine, let's take Tim Ferriss, or someone who's been doing something for a long time. You start dressing like the person. You start talking like the person. You start eating like the person. You start creating like the person. Everything is exactly the same. With your logic, you should definitely become successful, because you have become that person. right? I mean, actually, if you think about it, this is what that person is bringing to the table.
Thought process is.
Yeah, but it will never work out that way for two reasons. One is that that person is naturally that person, right? And second, that person has been that person for 30, 40 years before you anyway. So they are already ahead of you, right? So
It's like comparing their 300 chapter with your third.
exactly. And there's no point in doing that because you're putting on a facade, you're putting on a fake thing to kind of get success.
Absolutely.
Right? So this is where I think all of the other facets of your life help out in your career or your content creation journey or whatever. I personally feel that. I think if you're surrounded by people who support you and surrounded by people who spread some sort of positivity, big deal. If you have other activities outside your work that is fueling you to do this, great. You should have those things. You cannot have all your eggs in one basket. And that's where all of these things come in, creep in. Like, for instance, if I have self-doubt and I have that regularly, right, all the time, and you spoke about perfectionism, I'm flipping it because of perfectionism. For every small piece of content, I'm trying to make it look better. Oh, is this good? Can this look better? All of that. That's always happening. But I think the two things I do is, one, just even if you think you're 95% ready, publish it. Don't think too much. If you have done everything you can, that's it. Don't overthink it. Put it. That's one thing. Second is, if I have self-doubt, I try to put myself into all of these other activities. So, for instance, I'm a national level football player, so I ensure that I play football every other day. I go, and the moment I run or moment I play, I'm back with a fresh mind. The same thing now. I'm going to Goa. We are talking about the break, and I have my travel plans, right? If you feel you're overwhelmed with work, take a break. Go, yeah, and I think kind of recharge your batteries and come back. But every time you look at someone else's piece, that comparison thing is definitely bound to happen. And I think this is one thing you can regularly do. It's your lifestyle, it's your routine that matters. But along with that, this is not practical, or rather it's very tough to do. But when you get caught in that comparison trap, be mindful about it and pull yourself out. That is very important. And again, it's very tough to do. Like, how do you do that? Kaise karte? It's not like, it's a little difficult. But when oh man, look at this person, look at that person. And then you tell yourself, wait, why am I doing this? What's the point of comparing me to, and then either jump out of the app or just go and do something else, and you'll get back to it. And again, that becomes a habit of sorts. So I think, first of all, believing in yourself is the first thing. And then second, you call yourself and, kind of pull yourself out of it is the only way to go, because your question is generic. Like you said, it has nothing to do with content. It has nothing to do specifically with, you having doubt when it comes to creating itself. All of these things happen with anything. You could be in a regular, conventional 9-to-5 job, sitting at the desk, and then give a simple example. You get a hike of 20%. You're like, shit, man, last year I got only 5%. This is awesome. I got 20% hike. This is crazy. I can't. And on top of that, I got a bonus of about 1 month's pay. I'm like, this is great. I'm awesome. I'm happy.
Really happy. Yeah.
This is awesome. And then you hear that the person across the table has got a 35% hike and he's got a 2-month bonus. What do you feel? All that elation and happiness is gone.
Correct. That 20% would seem like 2 is removed, is just left 0%.
And this has happened firsthand. I've seen it happening to me, and it's happened to other people. But the idea is, what do you want, and are you happy with what you have? That's the only thing you can do. So believing in yourself is the first thing, and second, pulling yourself out of that cycle is the second thing to do. And like I said, throw yourself into hobbies, throw yourself into doing other things outside your work. And I think that's definitely one way to keep it well oiled, because the moment you get into that cycle, we're like, man, how it is. So yeah.
Great. That answers my question, which was about to ask, how do you keep yourself sane amidst all this chaos and all? You answered it really well. One thing, when you talk about quality, right? The content you mentioned, you wanted it to be like 100% in terms of quality. I mean, not by 100%, I mean good in terms of quality, better than all the other creators out there. Right. So obviously, I understand initially a person should not just run behind quality, because it involves certain cost, right?
Correct.
But now when you talk about quality, or in the initial phases, like, what is your definition of quality? Like, just visually, I mean, aesthetically good, or in terms of the equipments for the better audio? Like, what is quality in terms of views, so that a person should have this roadmap in his mind. Like after maybe 6 months or 1 year, I have that finance, I have all this thing to invest. Then I would like to make this kind of content or this quality of content. What is the definition of quality for you?
That's also a very good question, and the problem with this is it's a trap. Being very honest, the whole thing's a trap, because like you just said, maybe I'll get to that point where I have enough money to buy this piece of equipment. But if you think about it, equipment is changing every day or every year.
Right.
Right. So even if you get this and tomorrow the guy across the table again, let's take this guy as across the table as an example for anything now. Okay. There's one guy for everything, for corporate job, for creating everything. Right. So, but imagine if he gets the next piece of equipment, then you're like, my God, look at that. Look at the lighting. Look at the, I need to get that piece of equipment. So this whole thing is a never ending cycle. It's a never ending loop. Right. So in terms of quality, I think people, like I told you earlier, right? People look at it the wrong way. You can make high quality stuff with a phone itself. You don't necessarily need to get a high end DSLR or a mirrorless or whatever. Exactly, it's not really required. And I personally felt that when I got started, I was like, should I get a mic? For instance, this is the mic that we use for our podcast. It's one of the top mics in not just in the industry itself, right? And whatever. But when I got started, we started with a lavalier microphone, a simple clip-on collar mic. And I was like, can I make it sound good with just this? And the answer is yes, you can. The point is you'll have to figure out how to do it, because you actually have to spend time and figure it out. So for instance, if you need to make your iPhone shot look very similar to a camera shot, then you need to actually get the right app, figure out what are the right settings, how am I supposed to frame, where should the lighting be, all of that. The problem that arises is that people think you can't do it, or they think we have to get this piece of equipment because it makes my job so much easier. Because I don't have to learn all of this then, right? Why do I have to understand? But the funny thing is, once you get that piece of equipment, for you to get it to look a certain way, you have to again invest time in it, right? So I'll give you a simple example of what I did. So when I got started with my podcast, it was a 3-camera setup.
Okay.
Full-blown 3-camera DSLR setup. Proper. We can shoot in 1080. We can shoot in 4K.
Profiles,
Proper. Yeah. So the only investment I had to make was getting 3 tripods, right? And then now the question was, where did the cameras come from? I didn't own a single piece of equipment. I just put out a lot of messages and I asked a lot of my friends, family members. I'm like, do you guys have a DSLR? Do you have a mirrorless? And a lot of people got back. And I started, I started with just that. Wow. There were so many other challenges with that too. And I created about 16 episodes just using that.
Oh, amazing.
So you can get started with a very, and again, like I said, everyone's like, oh, I need a studio space to shoot. I'm like, bugger, my dining room is my studio space. Just set it up. Lighting.
Home is a place everybody wants to keep it properly decorated and well. So what else could be a better studio than that?
Exactly. And also another thing is, right now, I would prefer for my podcast to be at home. Now, but the problem is living in India that, there are, your other neighbors are either making some sort of noise or there's a street hawker seller. So because of that is why we have had to move to a studio, right? And another example is with lighting. Everyone's like, okay, what is the right lighting for a video podcast? Or what is the right lighting for a YouTube video? What will they do? They'll go and Google it and say, okay, best lighting options. What will you get? You'll obviously get the light I'm using right now, which is like a Godox proper professional light, right? And then you're like, oh, should I spend 15 or 20,000 on this piece of equipment? Now, the answer is no, you don't, because you can find other alternatives. I started with a paper lantern setup for my light. It cost me $150. That's it. Sure. $150, and I bought 2 bulbs. And I had the thing, and that is what I still exactly. And I have it hung right in between us, and that is, you won't believe it, that is still the lighting I use today.
Oh wow!
So my YouTube videos, I use this professional lighting and all of that. For my podcast, I just have this lantern that hangs there. The whole thing has cost me $400.
Oh my God.
Now the question is, would you? How did I figure it out? It's by reading up about it. It's about looking into what others are using. Is there other alternatives? How can I get started on a shoestring budget? How do I do that? And finally, I figured it out with this. And the funny thing is, it's still the same thing today, right? So about 16, 17 episodes in is when I started making a little bit of money, not from the podcast, from my client work. I was like, okay, maybe I should buy a camera now. Then I knew I need to purchase the right kind of equipment. And then again, it's that. So I think this is why I keep saying, get to doing. Don't think and plan and all of that. Don't overthink and figure out a lot of things for 10 years down the line. Get to doing. In that first 6 months, you'll realize whether you can even create. Imagine you buy 3 pieces of camera, and then you get like the best top end lighting and all of that. And then like 5 episodes in, you're like, shit, what is happening? I don't even like doing this. And I've spent a couple of lakhs on this. What's the point? So I think the cycle is endless. So trying to make do with what you have should be your first step. And second, in terms of assessing quality, that is where I think you will have to be a good consumer. You will have to consume the right way. There's no other way to go about it, because unless you consume, you won't know what the other people are doing. And second, once you do know what they're doing, then you'll realize, okay, should I be doing something like this or even better or worse? So when I looked at the top 100 podcasts in India, not a single one of them, even including Ranveer's show, is doing, I feel, video at the level we are. Because his is a good 3-camera setup, yes, but I think his lighting can be improved. I personally think that. I think that better lenses can be used, to kind of get that nice creamy bokeh depth, all of that. So that's where I had to look at the West. I started looking at other podcasts, and I realized only a handful of people in the world are doing this, not just in India. So I'm like, is there a way I can make that, a big thing for my show? And well, that's worked out for me. So yeah, I think understanding that level of quality is first key, and then trying to stick with that for the long run, and then slowly upping your game, slowly but very surely upping your game.
Right. I mean, it's hard to believe that it's coming from a guy who was totally zero while starting his content journey.
Exactly, dude. Even I can't believe it, man. I see this every time. So my wife is very creative. She knows, a lot of things. I run it by her, because she's able to, she has an eye for this, right? Aesthetic designs, all of that. So when I come up with certain things, I'm like, does this even look good? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Initially, I had a lot of that doubt, but now, your brain is so powerful, man. The neuroplasticity in your head is just ridiculous, because the more and more I started doing this, it started coming more naturally to me. Creative ideas started flowing. I used to love, and I've spoken about this in a lot of my YouTube videos, I used to love writing, scripting, right? Like I used to like writing long form. I would have loved to publish a book. Okay. When I was a kid, I used to write a lot. My teachers were like, wow, this guy is going to, write big things. And then what happened? Life happened, and I stopped doing that, right? Now I've gotten back into scripting for YouTube videos. I've gotten back into scripting for my newsletters, and ideas are flowing left, right, and center.
Wow.
So I think you just get to doing. It's as simple. I know it sounds very cliche, and this is all these things are very cliche, dude. It's all, like, oh my God, does this even make sense? I mean, this is what everyone else, is talking about. Yeah, Gary Vaynerchuk is saying the same thing. Tim Ferriss is saying the same thing. Ranveer Ahluwalia is saying the same thing. What is happening? I mean, is this even worth it? These guys are these, but there's some truth to it. True. There is definitely some truth to it. So yeah.
The only difference, why a lot of people become successful after following all these cliche things is that they follow, they implement, they take action Correct. On that. Correct. There's this one concept I learned in one of the recent workshops that I attended. It's called SSG. Okay, and by SSG you mean start, simple, and ghatiya. Okay, that bad. I mean, I'm pretty sure you're aware of this fact that when you're writing something, write bad. And one of my mentors, Mehak Mirza Prabhu, she's an amazing storyteller. I learn a lot from her. And she's coined this term. She gave this term to me. Just start writing bad. It's okay to write bad. It's perfectly normal to write bad, because it is through this bad writing you'll eventually get to good, better, and totally out of the box kind of creative writing. Yeah. So
so that reminds me, there's this one reel I think that we just put out, and again it's from one of my episodes. The guest was talking about how there was this painter who used to paint the same thing every day. Okay. Every day, every other week or every day or whatever, is painting the same thing. And then people are like, dude, this is nothing great. Why are you doing this? You're doing the same thing again and again and again. So he's like, the day inspiration strikes, my work shouldn't hold me back.
Wow.
Right? Which is so true. And that's what most of us get, find it to be a little bit of a challenge. What's his name? Jerry Seinfeld said the same thing about jokes. He was like, how someone asked him, how do you become a better comedian? He's like, sit down and write some jokes, man. It's like, it sounds so stupid, right? He's like, sit and write some jokes. But that's what he did. He used to show up, sit and write for 1 or 2 hours straight. Just write jokes. And like you said, literally ghatiya jokes. It could be bullshit, but it'll all come back in a way that you can't even imagine it. And the same thing happens with a writer, right? You get writer's block. What do? Oh my God, the page is empty. What am I supposed to write about? Just write something. The idea is to get to it. And then after that, it'll slowly improve on top of that. So what you said is absolutely right. That first draft can go to the dogs. It doesn't matter. But you can always work on top of that. Maybe you'll come up with something else that's innovative. Who knows?
Correct. Yeah. The idea is to get through that first draft.
Absolutely.
This conversation से आपके आंसर से मुझे 3 points समझ में आए. Number 1, you need to start doing it. Doesn't matter how bad it is, just get to it, right? Number 2 is you need to think over your content. I mean, give that content, give what you are presenting to the world, give it a thought, right? And it should be like, you should be willing to revisit your content and listen to it again, right? And third, get a creative wife. Isn't it?
Absolutely. I just start with the wife. Oh man. No, but I think you summed it up very well. And every time I think about what are the traits that my content needs to vibe with, every single time I think, which niche am I targeting? What am I trying to put out there? Because there's so many ways I can explain the kind of content I'm putting out there. There's so many words I can use, fancy words. I can say, this is what I'm trying to say. But the two things is exactly what you said. And this is something I've been doing from the get-go. It's intention and action. That's it. Wow. And again, this reminds me of something else I heard. Everyone's like, your intention should be good. Your intent should be good. You should be, doing this with the right intent, and everything else will fall into place. Actually, only intent and intention is not good enough, because intent and intention is still in your head. It's still an idea in your head. You might, let me give you a simple example. You keep thinking, oh, I won't be racist. I won't be racist. I will not discriminate. I will not discriminate. The first time you see some person who you want to, treat weirdly, and you go ahead and treat him, but you still tell yourself, no, I'm not racist, because that's my intention.
Yeah.
But the question is, can you couple your action with your intention, right? So if you decide to do something and you're thinking to yourself, oh, no, I will do this. This is the kind of person I need to be. This is the kind of message I need to put out. Just thinking that is useless. You need to couple it with action.
With action.
So, yeah.
Absolutely right. I mean, it all boils down to just one thing. Just do it. Like Nike.
Absolutely.
Come on, Nike.
No, those guys have done it. I mean, there's a reason why that phrase is so powerful. And they have literally, they've got it bang on the buck. So, yeah.
Great. So what are your thoughts about the future of content creation industry in the country? Especially after COVID. So this has just skyrocketed. I mean, there's been like a volcanic eruption. Everybody is getting into this. And then Geo, because of that, it got supplemented, it acted as a catalyst. What is your take on the future of it in India?
So not just in India, I think the world is going to change with the kind of, just with the creator economy and just the content space itself. And I'm telling you, take my word for it, the next 10 to 20 years, things are going to evolve at a drastic level, and not just maybe in a good way, some maybe in a bad way, we don't know, but just because of how Web 3.0 is looking, just because of how the metaverse is coming into play, just because of just how the internet is now evolving, right? It's going to be it could be a scary scenario, or it could be, a good way, in a good way I look at it, because all these issues that we are going to see, I mean, everyone's apprehensive about, has been happening even with current social media as well. So I think there is a whole lot of scope, because all of this is on the creative side of things, right? Creators are at the forefront of anything that's going to happen tomorrow, I personally feel. And that's why I didn't get into this knowing this, or, thinking that, the creator economy is going to blow up. I got into this, and by some coincidence, it turns out that is the case. Because if you think about it, written content is slowly losing its charm.
Correct.
Right. I mean, there is definitely. I'm not trying to diss any of this. I still consume most of my content in written form itself. I love reading, uh, but the way blogs have now become vlogs, right? The way blogs have, let's say, evolved to something else now, where they combine it with photos and whatnot, right? It's not just written content, right?
Correct.
Things are slowly evolving. I think creators are at the forefront of anything that you need to do tomorrow. So I think this reminds me of what Tanmay Bhatt said in one of the podcasts. Uh, Earlier, it was, and again, I've said this in so many podcasts. So anyone who's already seen my shows would know this, but uh, anyone who was in there, I mean, let's say about 10-15 years ago, the biggest thing to do was to become an engineer.
True.
15-20 years ago, right? That is the thing to do. I mean, now it's become a norm. Back then, it's like you become an engineer, you are set for life because of security and all of that. Makes sense.
Right.
Then it became the MBA, right? You get an MBA, you will be able to set yourself apart because engineering became like a norm, right? So now, now MBA has also become like a sort of a norm. So how do you set yourself apart? So companies and individuals are looking for people who can balance out business or tech with creativity. Those are the guys who are like a triple threat: business, tech, creativity.
Correct.
If you think about it, someone heavily in the tech space would not be creative or wouldn't be in the creative space at all. Or someone who's in the business space may not get too involved in. But the people who have gotten all of these together are the ones who kind of, transcend all of that. Let's say Gary Vaynerchuk, right? It's a very simple example of a guy who knew business and then who just started creating. His first couple of videos was just nonsense. He was just putting himself, but he kept showing up. He kept creating over and over again. And now look at where he is. So I think if you can somehow become more proficient or gain some expertise in these fields, it's going to go a long way. And in all of these, like I said, you can be a tech expert and have content or creativity, or you could be a business person and have content or creativity. But the content or creative bit is still common. That's why I think the future of being a creator or the creator economy and things are just things we can't even imagine, I feel, are going to happen tomorrow. Right? Like I see a lot of companies. No, I see a lot of individuals having IPOs in the West.
Okay.
There are formats where people are selling off like personal shares. Like think about, like you're investing in a creator. You see Tim Ferriss, who's okay. Let's say we have an up and coming YouTuber. How do we invest in that person? Right? Wow. It's not an IPO per se, but it's pretty much that, in a different format. Yeah. So I think if you can get into the creator space, now is the right time, and it's going to be the right time for a whole lot of time. Don't worry about, it's too late to the game. People have already been doing this for years and all that. Once you get into the creative space, you'll anyway have to innovate to keep up. And when you're innovating, you're anyway going to get ahead of the game. Absolutely. So nothing's going to change. So I think the future is very, very bright for content. Very bright. I mean, look at everything we're consuming today. It's content.
So everybody, obviously, at the core of it, they have money, right? And it's good to have it because then it gives you a different kind of professionalism if you are seeing it in a good way. So how, according to you, a person, should monetize the kind of content that he's creating? Or, I mean, I hope you're understanding my question, right? It is how to earn money from the content, or what kind of content to be produced so that they can monetize it in a good way, or what are the different ways to monetize, maybe like a podcast or YouTube videos, all these things.
So when you start putting yourself out there, right, with any field, it doesn't have to be only with creators, but I've seen people in the creative fields usually have more doors open up because of so many reasons. Like I told you, creative field and the content space is like common for all these other industries and verticals and fields and all of that. So that's why maybe creators get a lot of opportunity. I'll give a simple example. If someone becomes an actor, it doesn't end there, right? If the person becomes an actor, then automatically they get a good following in Instagram. They also get speaking gigs. They also get modeling or photo shoots. They get brand deals. They get maybe they get anything through their PR firm, right? So they basically have opportunities that are multifold that open up just because that person is an actor.
Right.
Like half the actors, like Nawazuddin Siddiqui, like can this guy model? But he's now a model as well by default, right? But
True.
he's so good at what he does. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter, right? So how well can they plug in a brand with this particular, like Neeraj Chopra? Like the moment he came back, they caught him and they said, "Come, you're the face of cred and whatnot," right? Like think about it. Like so the moment you can get into any of these fields and make a mark for yourself, I think everything else slowly open up. So to answer your question, I'll take any content piece, right? Be it a video or a YouTube, a podcast. There are numerous ways you can monetize.
Hmm.
And everyone, again, because the easy answer is ads that run on your videos. It's like, can I make a lot of money through that? The answer is no, you can't. Like with YouTube videos, unless you are amassing about 1 million views on an average, you cannot make money off of the ads that YouTube is running on the platform. And by this, for people who are listening or watching who don't know how this works, the idea is the every single ad that you watch before the video starts or in between and all of that are not ads that the creator picks. It's ads that YouTube picks to run on the channel. Earlier, I think if you didn't have I think 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours, you wouldn't be able to switch on monetization on your channel. And that's still the case. But earlier, they wouldn't run the ads on your videos. So by default, you knew whether this person is making money or not. Now YouTube has overridden that clause and they run ads on anything and everything.
Yeah,
but the creator only makes money if you have checked off those boxes, right? So everyone thinks, oh, I'll get into this because ads will pay for everything. And I'll give you a simple example. A lot of the podcasters, and I'm part of a lot of these communities who are into podcasting, they're like, can I run ads on my a podcast now? They'll run it just like YouTube. I said, you can run it, man, but you'll make nothing, close to nothing. Literally, you are giving people a chance to jump out of the app and stop listening to your content because of the ad. So you're not going to make anything. Maybe in a year you might make 10 rupees, let's say, or you make maybe $10 also. Is that really worth what you're trying to do, right? So first and foremost, knowing that there are ads is one thing, but that's going to be a complementary or supplementary factor. It's never the main thing. That's one thing. The biggest place where creators can make money is through brand deals. That is the only way I think you can eventually get that. But then at the end of the day, it comes down to metrics. If you're getting views, you're getting listens, you're getting downloads and all of that, then brands will say, we are willing to spend so and so on a particular video like this.
True.
Do you go looking for it? I don't think so. I think you create content and they come looking for you. True. That is the only, already you have a power of authority if someone's coming looking for you, as opposed to you having to pitch to someone and then try. You'll never get the amount of money that you feel you deserve. Correct. So that's the sponsorship deals is another one. Third is you become a creator and you're so good that, like I said, you could become a public speaker. Maybe your face is the perfect thing for a TV show, so they'll pick you up, as an actor. Or maybe some of these colleges need you as a speaker because, well, you're like an expert in that field and you get paid for that. So the options are endless once you start getting into it. It's just that don't get into it thinking you're going to make money. Like I said earlier, it's as simple as that. Get into it because you have that drive to create. Maybe you might be creating the in terms of quality nothing great, but the kind of message you're putting out there vibes with a lot of people. You're like, wow, that's enough, that's good enough. As long as one of those things are checked off and you're doing it because you like it, do it, and then everything else will fall into place. And when it rains, it pours. So the options are endless. And again, it's all like a cycle, right? So once you go through getting maybe you're getting an average of about a couple of thousand views, then automatically brands will start reaching out to you. Maybe you start small. That tells other brands that, okay, there are brand integrations. So then the bigger brands start reaching out. And then through the course of that, maybe you switch on monetization on YouTube. So then you start making a little bit of money through the ads as well. But are you doing this for that? No, that should never be the intent, is what I keep telling all my creator friends. And I think, that the avenues are endless, man. And now with NFTs and with you create a piece of content and tomorrow you can sell that piece of content to someone and say that person owns the right. Imagine that. right? Now I'll give you a small idea, or maybe you can even say inside scoop. I'm actually talking to a radio station to see if my show can go up on the radio station.
Wow, lovely.
So if that will be great. Imagine Radio One playing my show. So then
Wow.
that's another way to make money. Again, something not a lot of people would think about. So
Hmm.
there's so many ways you can go about it. And I think once you cross a particular listen mark or view mark or downloads mark or subscriber count, automatically they'll reach out to you. I
Hmm.
have inquiries for me to be the host of someone else's podcast.
Wow.
So, which I would have never imagined, right? I mean, why would someone need me?
Correct.
And I had to say no to 2-3 gigs. One was in Mumbai where I had to go and be a host of a show, and they're willing to pay me good money for the entire day of shoot. This is what you get. I
Hmm.
never thought you can make money off of that. Why do they need me? But then you never know.
Hmm.
And there are people who want me to make a video talking about a particular app, and
Mhm.
they'll pay you for this much of the editing and all of that, which
Hmm.
is a huge thing as well.
True.
Who expects these things to happen? So that's where I think the creator space is the most diverse in terms of the opportunities that can pop up. But the only thing you have to ensure is that you show up and you do it, which is the toughest thing. So yeah, if you can sort that out, everything else is very easy. Yeah.
Absolutely correct. That domino effect will definitely happen, but the very first domino that you need to move is that of your craft.
Correct. And that domino effect also could be 100 dominoes that you're doing just for yourself. You're just
True.
doing it over and over and over again because you like it. And then people start noticing that. I know for the fact that if you are a creator and you start, right, what will you do if you become a YouTuber or you have a podcast? You'll first share it with your family and friends.
Hmm.
Correct. You'll try to get subscriber count from them. You'll try to get them to watch. Half of them won't give a shit.
Hmm.
The other half will maybe they'll come on board, they'll watch, they're like, okay, this is great. They might be excited to see what's happening.
Right.
But what I personally feel is over time, you'll start discovering new audience. You'll start discovering new people who vibe with what you're doing, and then they become your subscriber. And then over time, people who will also start following.
Hmm.
That's the kind of cycle I have noticed. So imagine you saying, I have 10,000 people on LinkedIn. So that means if I start a YouTube channel, it should be successful. All 10,000 should subscribe. Then automatically I'm, doing well. Imagine I get 10,000 views. That's the worst expectation to have. Right? I mean, you've already lost the battle.
Hmm.
Right? So I think that once you're doing this for yourself, and everything else will kind of fall into play. I know I've been saying the same thing over and over again, but it's as simple as that, dude.
But it does make sense, That's why I said in the middle of the session that that the reason why I'm loving your answers is because they genuinely have that authenticity into that. Because see, so like for those people who just want to know what is domino effect, read this book, The One Thing. I'm recently
Yeah.
reading it, so that's why I'm aware
That's
of
a brilliant book. From anyone who likes marketing, that's the brilliant book. It's incredible.
It'll increase your productivity in an insanely amazing way. Trust me on that. And your answer, so into that book, it is clearly written. Just focus on that one thing, and that one thing which could make all the other things meaningless, kind of. That आपने एक चीज पे फोकस किया, बाकी चीजों पे वो अपने आप उसका इफेक्ट दिख जाएगा.
Correct.
आपके आंसर्स के अंदर वो सारी चीजें थी. सारी चीजें means that the concept of one thing, that domino effect. And in most of the answers, you talked about that one thing. And for you, it was just create that content, create that damn piece of content.
Yeah. And also, like this takes me back to like your routine or your daily life, right? I'm the kind of person who would put up 20 items to do on a to-do list for the entire day. Right. And then you get through the whole day. And I had a YouTube video also talking about it. You finish, you check off 2. And by the end of the day, there are 23 items because you've added more items. And you're like, oh my God. And then you feel sad. Yeah. Then that's where, when you feel sad, then doubt creeps in. Self-doubt into, feeling depressed and all of that. So I think what I've started doing of late is picking that one thing for that particular day. If I get this one thing done, I'm done. So today, like giving a simple example, today I woke up late because I had like a long night of editing with the team and all of that. I woke up today and the first thing I'm doing today is this conversation with you. And today is a dedicated day for podcasts. At 3:30, I have another podcast with another person who had, again, your team has been following up with me for a while, and I had to tell them that my schedule's all over the place. But this time works because I have another podcast in the same day. So I can couple this out, all the setup and everything. I can just use the same thing.
True.
Right. So that one thing, if I'm done with these two, I'm done. Then I'll go play football. I'm good. I'm sorted. And then tomorrow, or maybe late in the night, I'll get back to editing a little bit. Tomorrow, full day of shoots. So I stick to that one thing that you can get. Don't overwhelm yourself. That's a very simple, like gyan, or simple way to kind of get past all these small roadblocks and issues.
Lovely, loved your gyan-filled answers, Akash. Trust me on this. All these answers were pretty detailed, and I love them for the fact that they gave all the 360-degree insight about that answer. Earlier, I was thinking, okay, if I ask this question, I might get, to be honest, I have, kept a few questions ready to ask, but it wasn't required for me to look into that, because all these things were actually coming from you into the answers. And from that only, I was, able to relate and ask more questions. And all these answers are so apt to our listeners, because they cover all those basic things. And then from intermediate to advanced level, like how to monetize the content by just focusing on that one thing. I mean, truly, I'm totally mind blown, you can say that. I'm just trying to absorb all the content, and thankfully we'll put it so I can watch it again and again. Definitely this one podcast is one such piece for me, which I will definitely revisit multiple times. Trust me.
No, so the another big reason I got into podcasting is because I wanted to improve as a conversationalist, right? Someone who can hold a conversation. When I was at my corporate job, and English has always been a good, very strong subject for me in terms of, I used to write a lot of good emails, and that's where most of the conversations ended, because you didn't really get a chance to sit down and talk to people, because you have your 9 to 5 and everything is, all over the place. But when I started getting into this, I started figuring out how are ways you can ensure that you give the answer that person's expecting, at the same time have it coupled with all of that. So this is still, again, it's all in the works. I mean, there's process that we have to figure out, and I don't think it'll be a never ending process for the most bit, but I think that strive is what I am running behind, trying to constantly keep at it. So and all my guests as well as helped me in that, sitting down and really connecting and talking to them has been very, very instrumental in becoming the kind of person, or the way you have a conversation now. So thank you so much. I'm glad I was of some help at least.
No, you were amazing. You were amazing. Like, it will help a lot of our listeners to exceed really, really well in their life. And as they say, your vibe attracts your tribe. You've been living that.
Yeah.
So you walk your talk, and that's an amazing thing. And I'm so glad that we had this conversation today, which will help a lot of people. And thank you so much, and all the very best to all your ventures, Akash.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rohit. And yeah, the same for BizGurukul. And I'm glad that you guys are doing this. More people need to try and help other people. I think the world is a much better place if we can all grow together. So I'm glad.
Definitely.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. So guys, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. और यहाँ पे आज आपने सुना कि कितने सारे तरह से आप कंटेंट क्रिएटर स्पेस में अपने लिए एक मार्क बना सकते हैं, पावरफुल करियर अपने लिए क्रिएट कर सकते हैं, और अगर जो आपका ड्रीम है इन्फ्लुएंसर बनने का, टॉप पे जाने का, वो सारी चीज़ें अचीव कर सकते हैं. लेकिन द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इज take action on that one thing which is most important without thinking about the results that you are going to get. क्योंकि वो रिजल्ट सब आएंगे, लेकिन अगर आपने उस एक्शन पे फोकस किया जो जरूरी है, तो आपको वो वाला रिजल्ट मिलेगा जो आपको चाहिए. सो दिस वाज आकाश दामोदरन फॉर यू. मिलते हैं अगले एपिसोड के अंदर. इम्पैक्ट शो बाय BizGurukul. थैंक यू.